If you think your life is over when you quit drinking, think again, because today we're talking about sober yoga in Bali. Yes, you heard that right. Imagine swapping hangovers for sunrise yoga sessions, or trading the last call in Margaritaville for breathtaking beaches, and actually waking up feeling amazing. Our guest today did just that. She went from partying hard in Dubai to leading a global sober yoga movement, proving that sobriety isn't the end of fun, it's just the beginning. Now, if you're ready to rethink what life without alcohol can look like, stick around. This episode might just change everything.
Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you, and you are not alone. In today's world, networking, socializing, and celebrations often happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice.
Welcome to Sober Life Rocks. Today we're hanging out with Alex McRobert, better known as the Sober Yoga Girl. Originally from Canada, she spent years working abroad before realizing alcohol just was not serving her anymore. But instead of just quitting drinking, she built an entirely new life, one filled with yoga, mindfulness, and helping others do the same. And now she's the founder of the Mindful Life Practice, leading programs like Sober Girls Yoga, where she makes sobriety and spirituality fun and accessible. She also hosts the Sober Yoga Girls podcast, where she dives into real talk on recovery, mental health, and creating a life you actually love. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Margie.
Absolutely. So, just everybody's dream, right? Yoga in Bali, but it didn't start there. So can you just kind of share a little bit about your journey, about how you got here, like what led up to you getting sober and then what happened next?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting when I'm asked this question because my life journey has been it's just interesting to walk back through it. I think everyone has an interesting life journey, but how I've ended up here is such a random meandering path. So I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and that's where I'm from. And my family, my parents, we had never really been abroad that far to Asia, even really to Europe. I think my parents might have done one trip to Europe when they were young adults. And so the fact that I've ended up making my life living in Asia is just so wild. So when I was in university, I did schooling to become a school teacher. I did a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Education. And coming out of that program, at the same time when I was in the program, I discovered yoga. I also got heavily into partying. And then when I came out of the program, there really weren't jobs for teachers in Canada at the time. And so they were really pushing us to go overseas. And I was not planning on going to the Middle East. That was not in my plan. I had so many misconceptions about it, so many beliefs and stereotypes and fears and blah, blah, blah. And then I ended up being recruited by a school principal to a country called Kuwait, which is a tiny country in between Iraq and Saudi Arabia. A lot of people don't know about it because it's so tiny and so random. And so this is where I moved when I was 23. And so I was working there teaching grade 3 at the biggest international private school for the wealthy, probably the wealthiest kids in the world, basically. And Kuwait is a country where alcohol's illegal. So I very quickly learned to make it. I was networking with people. I was drinking on embassy properties. And it just became kind of a crazy time. And then during that time, I also met someone about halfway through my time in Kuwait, and he worked in the oil industry. And so he had the resources and the ability to start flying to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to party. And that was kind of the party capital of the region. And so we started going there, and this to me felt at the time like a lifeline. And in many ways, I think we did kind of become each other's like buddies through this. But, you know, it escalated really quickly because we ended up getting married, and I was 25 and he was 30. And we really just weren't thinking about, I mean, maybe he was thinking about it, but I wasn't thinking about how this would affect my life. And it ended up being what felt like the biggest mistake of my life, because I ended up leaving him after 2 months and had a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And when I got back to Canada after this, I got diagnosed with a mood disorder. And for a long time, I felt like there was something wrong with me. And that's why I had made the choices that I did. And as a much older person, now I'm 32, I can look back and be like, that was not that crazy. You know, I was living in a country where you could not legally cohabit with a partner unless you were married. So what I did is kind of appropriate for the context, you know, like it's not something that I need to be like, I have issues because I made this choice, you know, because it kind of makes sense for the context in which we found ourselves in. It might have been like crazy and I might not have been thinking forward. But it definitely kind of fits into the context of my situation. And when realizing that, I have a lot more compassion for myself. But in this time after we split up, my drinking got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I think it's because I had so much guilt, so much shame. I thought there's something wrong with me. I wasn't telling people that I was divorced. Like I had just moved to Abu Dhabi, which is just outside of Dubai. And I was kind of living this fake life, like not telling anyone my story. And I think we know in sobriety that a lot of the times we're drinking to just kind of cover up or cope with something else, right?
For sure. Complete self-medication. Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as I got sober, I realized that.
But what brought you to getting sober?
What brought me getting sober? You know, I did not hit an extreme rock bottom. It just felt like my life was unmanageable. I had credit card debt. I was unhappy. Things were chaotic. I was like tutoring kids and doing a whole bunch of work outside of my job to try and make money to support my partying lifestyle and my traveling lifestyle, basically. And it was just, the situation felt like unmanageable. And so I decided and I think I had been Googling like how to quit drinking. And I had seen a lot of ads for a 28-day program. And I ended up signing up for it. And I was just planning on quitting for a month, like just taking a break and seeing how I felt and then kind of sorting things out. And after about 3 weeks into it, I realized like I'm going to be sober probably for the rest of my life. And and then that was kind of like the transition point for me. And I kind of realized as soon as I was alcohol free, like I never want to drink again because I feel so much better.
Amazing. Amazing. So, okay. So you got sober, you're still in Abu Dhabi. Like what happened next?
Yeah. So actually my story is so wild when I talk about it. So in about 30 days into sobriety, I met a psychic. And how I met him was I had a teaching assistant through this whole time because I taught grade 1. I taught really little kids. So I had a full-time teaching assistant who I spent a lot of time with every day. And from the moment I met her, she was like, you should meet my psychic. And I was like, not into any of this stuff. Like I was into yoga, but I didn't believe in a lot of things in the spiritual realm. And at this point, 30 days sober, I was like, you know what? I'm so depressed. I'm so lost. I'm so confused. It was like when the pink clouds come down and you're like, what am I doing with my life? And so she
Take away the medicine and the pain is still there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she said, just go meet him and see how it goes. And I drove to Dubai, which is maybe about an hour drive to meet him, get into this meeting, count down from 21 to 1, open my eyes. And he says, you are not meant to be a school teacher. You are meant to be a healer. And I just started crying. And through the whole session, he basically just told me about this future. You know, you're going to run yoga retreats around the world and support people in their healing. And you're going to own a retreat center one day. And this vision, it just was the first time anyone had taught, like this was a dream of mine that I had had for ever. So it's not like he put a new idea in my head, but he just spoke about this future as if it was definitely happening. And I think this was the change for me, was that instead of me being like, well, I wish I could be a yoga teacher, but I'll never make enough money. But I wish I could start a business, but I'll never make enough money. Instead of having this in my head, I just switched into like, this is definitely happening. And from there, I just became obsessed with building my business. I almost turned into a workaholic after, which I spent a lot of time recovering from. But I just became obsessive with like growing my podcast, writing my book, growing my business, and bringing it to the point where I am today. So in about a year and a half, I could quit my job. And a lot of that was aided by the pandemic, actually. So I know the pandemic negatively affected a lot of people, but for me, it enabled me to see the career of yoga in a new model, which the model I always thought was I would stay in Abu Dhabi or be in some city and just freelance teaching drop-in yoga, which that's not ideal. I mean, it works, but your income is not in your control, right? You're at the mercy of whatever studio you work for, whatever hours they want to give, whatever hourly rate they want to give you. If they want to cut or cancel your class, maybe you're being paid per head. It's just not that sustainable. Some people make it work and I applaud them, but there was no way that I could do that. And so in COVID, I was able to launch my online business. And the thing about my online business is like, so I have this yoga community. I also write, I have a paid Substack subscription, so I write for it. And then I teach these advanced philosophy classes and trainings. And so this is like my regular online income. And then I also do retreats, not only my own, but also for other people. So a lot of sober communities come to Bali and I teach yoga for those communities.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So here we are. I have you here. I would love for you just to share with us, what it is about what you bring and sober that listeners could benefit from.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing about yoga is that a lot of people, so in the Western world, it's kind of been mismarketed as this like stretching exercise class, which I don't really have an issue with because I think it's an entry point for people to get into what it actually is, right? Because if you talk to most people, I will often, when I'm teaching philosophy on a training in Bali, I will say, the thing is like, yes, Western yoga has really diluted yoga and it's mismarketed this and it's appropriated it. But however, all of you are here because you did a yoga class once and you felt a change. And then you were like, there must be something more to this. And then you kind of dug deeper and now you're here for a month learning this in Bali, right? And so it is a doorway and an entry point into the vast depth of what it has to offer. And so that is the starting point for a lot of people. And they'll go into a yoga class and they'll be like, oh, this actually helps me manage my stress and helps me calm down. And that's a great tool on its own. You could just do that and your life will still have improved. I teach the philosophy of it in addition to the exercise classes. And the philosophy is this, I mean, there's so many texts that it's founded upon, but the main one that I study is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is 196 sutras that are basically about the way in which you live your life. And there's so many different things that you can pull from this. Like, it's going to help you study how your brain works, how your thoughts work. The yam and niyam are like ethical and moral precepts of how to live your life. He addresses what are the causes of suffering. He gives solutions for how to recover from suffering, and different meditation practices that are going to help you get there. And he basically gives a structured way it's like a structured way to live happily and healthy and support yourself in your recovery and healing. And so I think it pairs so well with the sober journey. And I actually did 30 days of AA meetings in January, just kind of out of curiosity for it, because I never did AA when I got sober. And I was like, I'm in this world. I should really understand what this like program is. And it was like so interesting to me because I'm sitting there listening to these people talk about the 12 steps and how each step corresponds to this or that. And my brain would just be firing, being like, that's that thing from yoga. That's that thing from Buddhism. That's this is, this is that. And it was just so enlightening to be like, okay, 12 steps is, is basically like practicing yoga, in my opinion. And so I
Interesting.
think, yeah, I think there's many different ways to recover, but I think for people that are really looking for like a spiritual support, the yoga recovery is an incredible way to do so.
Okay, so I'm one of those people who only knows of it as a stretching or, breathing or pseudo exercise movement. So help me understand like how this philosophy stuff correlates to what I associate with yoga. What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So what you're associating with yoga is actually called the asana. And so I think about this all the time in my head because I'm like, when I tell people I'm a yoga philosophy teacher, I think they have no idea what I'm actually talking about because they're picturing the poses that they see in images, right? And that's actually what's called the asana. The asana is part of something called the 8 limbs of yoga. And the 8 limbs of yoga includes yam, niyam, and then asana, which is the third limb. Pranayama is breath work. And then the successive fourth stage, the next 4 stages are basically all phases of meditation. So there's pratyahara, which is turning inward, dharana, which is concentration, dhyana, which is meditation, and then samadhi, which is consciousness. So
Mm,
this whole practice is trying to get us to a higher state of consciousness, basically. It's
mm,
trying to get us to see the world differently, to have more compassion, patience, equanimity, joy, and ease, to have all of these character traits. And so we start that by reframing how we see the world and interact with the world, how we see ourselves and interact with ourselves. And then we do the asana, the poses. And now I just want to stop there and say that, so these 8 limbs of yoga, they're only covered in 50 of the sutras out of 200. So right there, you already know that this is a massive thing, or 196 to be more correct. So there's 196 sutras. Only about 50 of them are about the 8 limbs of yoga. Only 3 of them are about the asanas, the poses. So that's how small the poses are in this greater system. They're very tiny. But somehow the West kind of took that and ran with it and was like, this is yoga, right? And it really should say this is asana. It should say this is asana, right? Because you meet meditation teachers who say, I'm a meditation teacher, and they're teaching this small chunk of the 8 limbs of yoga. You teach breath work, you meet breath work teachers, they're teaching this small chunk of the 8 limbs of yoga, right? And so we should be not saying we're yoga teachers. We should say we're asana teachers to be more accurate. And then the yama and niyama is kind of the best beginning point for people that are like, okay, how can I change how I'm thinking? And I just want to sort of introduce you to what that looks like. So the first is ahimsa. Ahimsa is nonviolence. So that's like, how can I take every action not causing harm to other people? The second is satya, or truth. So can I tell the truth? The third is asteya, non-stealing. So just not taking what's not ours. Brahmacharya is moderation. Historically, this was related to sexuality and abstinence, but a lot of modern people have said it's about moderating all our energies. And then aparigraha is letting go. So it's just like letting go of what we're clinging to. And then you have the niyama, which are kind of like internal experiences. Internal as in that they're more about how we take care of ourselves. So we have saucha, which is cleanliness. Samtosha, which is contentment. And then we have, tapas. I'm like, why am I forgetting this? Tapas, which is commitment. Some people say it's discipline, but I would say it's commitment is a better word for it, for just showing up for ourselves. And then we have svadhyaya, which is self-reflection, and Ishvara pranidhana, which is devotion to a higher power. So
tell me about cleanliness as it relates to the inside.
Okay, so as it relates to the inside, what I more mean by that is that it relates to, so the first section is all about our outer energies and how we deal with the people and things around us, right? Like, I'm not going to cause harm to other people. I'm not going to steal from other people. And saucha, or cleanliness, I would say, is more of it is keeping your inside clean, but it's more about doing it for yourself. It's like, I'm going to keep my room clean. I'm going to keep myself clean. I'm going to keep my insides clean, by thinking clean thoughts, by eating clean or eating good food. So but it's all about like, it's not about other people. It's like, it's not like I'm going to keep that guy clean. It's
Right,
like,
right,
I'm
right,
going to
right.
my space clean, whether it's my physical space. And I'll tell you something, I'm the worst at this one. I look like I have my camera framed so you can't see how messy my room is, but I know that this is the hardest one for me. And I'll just mention that as well, because sometimes people hear these and they start using this as a framework to judge themselves and be hard on themselves and criticize themselves. And I want to highlight that that's not the point. So the point is not, oh, I'm messy, I'm not a yogi, right? The
You
point
know,
is
I wanted
you
to
can
say that
see it.
what I really
Mhm.
like about this is that I often say that I my disease is a stress disorder that I
Yeah.
treated with alcohol.
Yeah.
And so my practice is that I have to do things to keep my stress at a manageable level, which to me means like cleaning the junk out of the head, right? Or dealing with something in real time as opposed to like stuffing it down. And
Yes.
I had this wonderful thing. I was working with a counselor when I was in treatment, and she tells the story about and I'm not from the farmland, so I don't even know if this is true or not, but she tells the story of a haystack, and that if you keep putting more hay on a haystack, eventually, with the right climate conditions, it can internally combust. And she said that is what rage is.
Yeah.
That when we put one little straw of hay, one little straw of hay, one irritant, one stressor, one anger, one thing, guilt, and keep adding it up, eventually it will combust. And for
Mhm.
me, that's what I used to drink about, was all the pain and all the stuff that I had stuff, and it would combust. And so when you talked about cleanliness, that's why I was like, wait, there's something there about maintaining that haystack.
It's so true. It's so true, and I was recently I was actually speaking about this with my mom last night, because I, like a lot of women, I've experienced sexual trauma, and when I was talking with my mom about how the first two instances that I experienced were when I was really young. I was 18 and I was 25. And then the most recent one, I'm a lot older and I'm now sober and I know a lot more. And I said to her, it is just shocking to me that I had, and this is not her fault because this is just the way the world is, but I had no counseling. It's shocking to me that I had no counseling and I just pretended like it never happened and I just kept going with my life. And these things just pile up and pile up and pile up. And so, my major stressor of my drinking issue was this marriage that I did when I was 25. But in reality, there were like, if you think about the successive things that happened to that, like a year
Mhm.
before I got married, I had this terrifying experience when I was alone in Spain. 5 years before that, I had this terrifying experience in Toronto, and none of this I've gotten any counseling for. I'm just carrying on as if I'm normal. And so this is the type of thing that builds up inside of us until it becomes unmanageable.
Right. And it's no one piece of straw. It's
Yeah.
the accumulation of the pieces of straw. And
Yeah.
so we can shame ourselves pretty quickly that why did I react that way to that one thing? It's not the one thing.
Totally, totally. And so this is what I'm experiencing now. So I had this terrible experience about a month ago, but I'm being very open about it because I know that being open about it is going to help me move through it. And I'll have these moments where I'll just get so angry at someone because of them not understanding or saying something that's like unhelpful. And then just understanding to myself, like, this is normal that you're having this emotional reaction. This is absolutely
Mhm.
normal, because you're processing and dealing with this thing. And it's better for you to be talking about it, right? If you don't talk about it, you're going to be talking about it 50 years from now in therapy, So the more that you just are able to process in real time, and then connect other people and hold space for yourself, and I just was so ill-equipped with this when I was younger before I got sober.
Mhm, mhm. So let me go back to these sober retreats that you have.
Yeah.
So do people who come typically have longer term sobriety and this is just like something they want to do? Or is this people who
Yeah.
are considering sobriety and you're there to sort of help a transitionary period? Like, tell me more.
Yeah. So I would say it's like kind of a huge mix. But most often, I would say people that come on the sober events in particular, most often are like celebrating a 1-year milestone. That I would say that's like the
Mm.
majority. It's like they get sober, they're looking for something to look forward to, they're looking for community. This is how they end up here. With my things like my yoga teacher trainings, the more advanced stuff, it's a huge mix. Like it's people that, some of them are curious. I think I'm actually leaving for India tomorrow for a sober women's retreat, and everyone on that retreat is sober. There's no sober curious, but last year I had a few sober curious people in the group. I want to say it's a mix of people that are 4 years sober, of people that are, I think everyone has at least like a year under their belt, and everyone's gotten sober through a different path. And I think that's really important to highlight because there's no one way. And I think it's just like having respect for whatever way people have done it. So whether they do AA, whether they call themselves an alcoholic, whether they have there's someone who got sober through my friend Rory, who I've become very good friends with. He leads these meditation programs to help people meditate to quit drinking. And there's one woman on the group who I think she's been sober for just over a year, and she got sober via that method, And so there's many different ways to put together the sober journey. And I think that's one of the most important things is that we're just supportive and open to all of them.
1000%. So with a little bit of time we have left, I would love for you, if you're willing, to share maybe one or two things that somebody who is listening could integrate into their rituals or routines.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give you two really simple meditation practices because these are things you can do anywhere. And I think that's the most helpful thing because if you are, depending on who's listening to this, if you have a job, if you're a parent, if you have commitments, it's very hard to just be like, okay, I'm going to go to a studio and take out 2 hours of my day to start a yoga practice. That might not
happen.
Yeah. So I want to give you two things that you can literally do anywhere when you're in the car, waiting for your kid to pick them up from soccer, you're, at the car mechanic, wherever you are. And the first is a really simple practice called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so if you're feeling like you're lost in like a story in your head of imagination or memory or whatever it is, start with seeing 5 things that you can see and just label them. So like I see that pink laptop case. I see that picture that I bought in Kuwait. I see that card. And then once you have the 5 things, you can close your eyes and see if there's 4 things that you can hear. And once you have those 4 things, see if there's 3 things that you can feel. Once you have those 3 things, see if there's 2 things that you can taste. And it could just be something that you ate before, your toothpaste. And then the last is something that you can smell. And this is a really, really simple thing that is just going to bring you into the present like that. And one of the biggest causes, I would say the cause of suffering is so we cannot control anything that's happening in our environment, right? All we can control is how we react to it. And so we are going to experience suffering in our lives. But how we can step out of that suffering is what's going to be the key to our recovery and our processing and our moving forward. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, first thing. And then the second is when you see you're in a heavy emotion, like you are, let's say you're craving alcohol. You're like, I'm craving having a drink. This is a Buddhist technique that you're going to find online, and it's RAIN, and it's recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. So recognize, I can feel that I'm craving alcohol right now. I acknowledge that that's happening. Recognize, allow. It's okay to crave alcohol. This is a neural pathway that I formed in my brain over many years. So this is a normal human experience. And then investigate, why am I craving this? Is it because I had a stressful day? Is it because I just fought with my partner? Is it because I'm tired? Is it because I'm not happy in my life? Is it because, what is the reason why this is happening? And then nurture is your chance to just give yourself a big hug and be like, you're going to be okay. This is going to be okay. And I think this is a super, super useful tool with any heavy emotion. I teach it with craving alcohol, but it can be called upon for anything. If you're sad, if you're in grief, if you're angry. And the point is not to push these feelings away because they're there for a reason, but just to allow their presence and allow them to move through you.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love about that so much is I did a 6-week course on John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness stress reduction, and I did meditation workshops and all these things. And they always talk about like, let the thought in and let the thought back out again. And it's like, I have some work to do with this thought. It's not just working its way out. And so I love how simple that is, that it actually is doing some work around it, but without attaching a whole lot of good or bad to it.
Yeah.
And that
exactly.
to me is the whole key, is it's not a good thought or a bad thought. It's just something that I want to recognize and investigate and allow, right?
Yep.
Recognize, allow, investigate, and then nurture. So much of the work that I've done personally has been adult childhood alcoholic work, because I was programmed with all of these messages. And so the pre-programming is all about like re-nurturing. And I think that's so important.
I recently started going to ACA in Bali, and I did not go to it because first of all, I had never heard of it before. Someone just announced it in a meeting, and I was like, oh, what's that? And then I thought, that's not me, because I didn't witness extreme alcohol abuse, and my parents would not identify as having an addiction. So I was like, I don't think that's for me. And I just want to highlight to anyone listening, it's adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families.
Yes.
And I would say pretty much, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people come from dysfunctional families, because you're not equipped with the tools. Like even something as simple as what I said before of like, it was not suggested to me to get counseling after having a trauma response. And that is no one's fault, because it was not suggested to them to get counseling because when they had trauma, so this is no one's fault. This is how society is dysfunctional, right? Because we're not equipping people with skills. And so even though I haven't seen a traditional addiction in my childhood necessarily, or one that would be seen as alcoholism per se, I get so much benefit from those meetings. And so if anyone is listening to this, and it's also very trauma informed, which is different from AA says, I have a gene that makes me an alcoholic. ACA says I experienced trauma. And I think that's really important, because trauma is often the root. So it's not like either one is wrong, but it's just a resource that's available that you might not know about.
For sure. I mean, even in the literature, they say people who come from adoptive families, people who come from military families, people who come from maybe a more rigid religious family, people who have suffered some sort of trauma. I mean, it's all of it. So it's not even just like the parents were dysfunctional, but rather there was something about your childhood that put these messages in your head that no longer serve you.
Yeah.
So, Alex, this has been amazing. Are there things that I haven't asked that you really wanted to share?
I don't think so, but I will share that I am working on a new recovery program for people. So I've been running these 30 and 60-day sober girls yoga challenges for about 5 years. And the primary goal of this was to help people stop drinking through yoga. And it's been an amazing program, and I've loved running it. As I come into my 6th year of sobriety, I've had a very challenging 2025 with a lot of challenges. Started off with realizing that I was addicted to Instagram and basically doing addiction recovery again. And what I've realized is that suffering is so universal, and it's ongoing. Healing is ongoing. And there's so many ways that someone could benefit from being in a room of recovery that aren't necessarily just an initial alcohol recovery. And I've been thinking a lot about Patanjali sutras. So I explained to you there's 296 of them. Some of them are so kind of irrelevant and unrelatable to the modern person, right? They're for advanced students, but a lot of them are very useful for the modern student. And so I've gone through and I've pulled the most 40 relevant concepts, I would think, for someone that is in recovery from something. And I've been working on developing a program for this. Like, it's going to be 40 days of meditation and learning, but it's also just going to be an ongoing recovery community. And it's going to be only for women. and just universalizing of like addiction, trauma, mental health. And so that's what I'm in process of. I was hoping to have it ready by April, but I've been derailed by my own recovery. And so I don't know when it will be ready, but if people are listening and this is something that interests them, just look out and just kind of follow along with what I'm doing. And it'll be at some point this year.
Fantastic, man. That's awesome. And so for anybody who is interested in following along, her platform, the Mindful Life Practice, is where you can find that. Plus, was on her website. There's like so many other resources on there that you should go check out for sure. Because, again, the reason I brought you on, the reason I wanted you here so badly is stopping drinking is just the beginning. And we talk so often to people on this podcast about like work-life balance and how to, navigate work situations and conferences and the busy and the go, go, go and the travel and all that. But I don't think we were supplying any tools. And so thank you. Thank you for being a tool that we could bring to people. Really, really appreciate that. And for all of you listening, if you're ready to be part of this bigger conversation, please join us at Amplify Sober Voices on January 15th, 2026, because we're going to bring together all kinds of professionals, advocates, change makers, podcasters, speakers, authors, to help reshape the way that we think about sobriety in work and life. Get all the details and register at amplifysobervoices.com. Let's change this narrative together.